The importance of bilingual education and its flaws. Bilingual education is very important. It makes a person more marketable. It opens doors for an individual, and it allows for that person to talk to more people. Why then, if bilingual education is so important, why is it looked down or frowned upon here in the United States? Well, unfortunately, there's this American way of thinking that some people think is correct, and it's kind of a derogatory remark, and that's, if you live here in America, speak English, or if you're American, how come you have an accent, or if you are American, how come you don't speak any English? And that's really sad for people to think that way, because being an American myself, I've actually been asked these questions, and it feels terrible. It feels terrible because as an American, yeah, I may have an accent, but that's because my first language is Spanish, and it was my native language, and I learned language here in America. So, when people would ask me these questions, I was just thinking in my head, how come you don't know any Spanish? We have new programs or new branches under the bilingual education program. For example, we have dual immersion and dual language. So those are some programs that are actually fairly new, and I've actually had quite of an experience with the dual language, because I've gone to several schools and I've seen how the dual language works, and I like it because they start the children quite early. They start them by teaching them 50% English throughout the day, and then 50% in Spanish. So the instruction is pretty balanced. Now, this actually works very well for Spanish native speakers, but it tends to not work so good with English native speakers. And I have a theory as far as why this is happening. Now, if you think about it, here in America, in the public school systems, testing is the number one thing that basically determines whether this student moves on to the next grade level or not. Here in America, in the public school systems, testing is the number one thing that basically determines whether this student moves on to the next grade level or not. Testing is mostly done in English. Actually, I believe it's up to the third grade where they stop testing in Spanish and they begin testing in English. And I find that it's really, really tough for some students, because some students haven't gotten the English instruction that they've needed. And if you're going to be teaching in Spanish, then I think it's only logical that you would test these students in Spanish, right? Now, once you finally introduce English, you test them at the level that they have learned. You're not going to test a student, or you shouldn't test a student like that is barely learning English, and you give them a test that was meant to be for a native English speaker. Does that make any sense? So beware, teachers, educators, legislators, parents, beware of these things. So what can you do to help students? Well, there's two groups of students. The first group of bilingual students. The first group, it's the native Spanish speakers. That's the bilingual one. And then you have your native English speakers. Yes, that's your bilingual two. Then bilingual one, those are your English learning students. And bilingual 2, that would be your Spanish learning students. Now, it's the group 2 that I am concerned about. The native English speakers who are learning Spanish. Why? Because these students are not getting the instruction that they need. And part of the reason why is because teachers know they're going to be tested in English, and so they kind of, I feel, they kind of just gonna like push them to the side and say, they'll be okay, because they're gonna test in English anyway. And see, that's a problem, because then you are shortchanging these students. You're not providing the quality of education that these students need. So please be aware of your student body. There's going to, now more than ever, diversity is going to be in your classroom. So be flexible, be understanding. You know, as a teacher, educate yourself. Educate yourself about different cultures, different languages. You know, the more that you know about other cultures and languages, you're going to be able to provide quality education to these students. If you really care for these students, educate yourself, and you'll see that you'll be able to provide quality education. And for bilingual teachers, I support you and I salute you, because it's not an easy job. Many times you will find yourself translating English to Spanish, Spanish to English, because of the lack of material. And many times you're going to have to go out of your way, the extra mile, to provide parents with different resources for these kids. Hey, you know, I'm with you. So thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next time.